From the first days of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, it became clear that the aggressor country ignores the legal norms recognized by the international community and violates the customs of war, attacking not only military facilities, but also residential buildings and civilian infrastructure.
Is it possible to fight now in the 21st century with these shells, these bombs, these missiles?
Even more shocking to the world was the brutal attitude of the occupation forces towards the civilian population in the occupied territories. In terms of the level of repression and cruelty, it was similar to the terrible times of the Second World War. Signs in the form of the Latin letters Z and V, with which the Russians mark their military equipment, have already gone down in history as symbols of violence, suffering and death. The village of Yahidna in the Chernihiv region was under occupation for 27 days. During this time, its residents had time to fully feel for themselves what the Russian world is.
I got into this basement on the morning of March 4th. We were led under the muzzles of machine guns, led into the basement of our first street, and we sat in this room the entire street. There were 37 people here, 10 of them are children. All adults sat on chairs for 28 days. It was terrible, because you understand how to sit with legs down. The legs were swollen, there was nothing to breathe.
The life of the local population in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine is deteriorating daily due to looting by the Russians. They loot enterprises and medical institutions, take away equipment. Hospitals are used for wounded soldiers, which limits access to medical care for ordinary citizens. People were deprived of all social guarantees and economic opportunities to provide for themselves.
The occupiers find and confiscated goods in all stores that accepted hryvnias. They also look for people who exchange currency and take all their money. No one ever saw the people who were taken to the basement and deported. They only say that they saw them working under machine guns somewhere in Vasilievka. Andriy, resident of the occupied city of Enerhodar, in an interview with RBK Ukraine.
Now the Russians are rebuilding the railway station and seaport of Mariupol and creating a transport hub there. Through it they plan to export grain, wood and other resources collected in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. Meanwhile, another batch of stolen metal is being exported from the seaport of Mariupol. And in the summer of 2022, the Russians exported about 400,000 tons of grain from 4 temporarily occupied Ukrainian regions. This is a third part of all grain reserves in the regions. This robbery does not stop even now.
The Russian occupiers continue to rob the peaceful population of Ukraine, appropriating the grain harvest of peaceful citizens of Ukraine. So, in the city of Berdyansk, Zaporizhia region, the so-called Russian occupying power is trying to export stolen corn by loading it onto barges, from the report of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook.
The damage to Ukrainian ecology caused by Russia is already estimated at $35 billion. Millions of hectares of nature reserves are under threat of destruction. The Askania Nova Biosphere Reserve in the Kherson region also came under the control of the Russian occupiers.
As barbarians, they basically do not understand what they are doing. They have already destroyed a large number of our valuable nature conservation facilities using our nature reserves as military bases, parking lots for tanks. The decisions they make today are not legitimate. The other day I signed the relevant appeals to the secretariats of international conventions so that firstly such activity of Russia would be condemned, and secondly the process of non-recognition of these actions of the aggressor would begin. Ruslan Strelets, Minister of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources of Ukraine, on the air of the National Telephone of Ukraine.
However, all the damage caused by Russia to Ukraine is documented by relevant organizations, including international ones, and for this the Kremlin will receive a bill for payment, by way of reparations or seizure of frozen Russian assets abroad, and Russian lawlessness will stop the deoccupation of all temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. Reported by Roman Smoler, Natalia Husak, UATV News.